Well, what'd you think about our new friend?
God, I'm just so glad he didn't say son. You were setting him up for it. I know you were.
No, I wasn't. I was just curious who he watches. I genuinely was curious.
Do you think, I wonder if, and it could just be because I'm not as plugged in maybe to Twitter politics. That's not true, actually. What do you think that like AOC like paved the way for people to not be as critical towards young people? Because I haven't seen this guy get anywhere, because he sounds pretty pragmatic, even though he's progressive.
Yeah.
No, what?
No, I don't think that's accurate. I think AOC didn't like pave the way.
Extra hot.
Oh,
You're good.
yeah, we're still on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, there's a disagreement in the audience.
I think AOC definitely opened the door and took a lot of the criticism and a lot of the heat for so guys like Maxwell Frost can have an easier
We should
time.
get this guy, mic him up, bring him over here. Get him a mic. Here, come sit on the couch for a second. Yeah.
Let's give him a mic.
But no, I do think that like people like AOC opened the door and made it easier for him. And he's going to make it easier for the next generation too.
Sure.
That's why I wanted to ask him, how do you navigate between being a progressive among all those liberals? Because he doesn't get that criticism that you said. And he does say the same things that a lot of these people say.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's an interesting guy for sure. He's super positive.
I can't imagine being like 25 and you're in Congress.
Right. Yeah.
He sounds like way more level-headed, though. I'm being harsh, I guess, comparing like the justice systems. He sounds pretty level-headed. But this guy's been doing activism. I think he was like the national director for March for Peace or whatever, for the gun
March
stuff.
for Our Lives.
Or March for Our Lives, yeah. And then the all the gun stuff, or not the gun stuff. It was, what did he do with the ACLU?
I don't remember.
It was a lot of work for the ACLU too. He mentioned working for felons' right to vote and everything. So maybe just the experience and everything kind of like made him a little bit more level-headed coming into Congress. So
he just seems that he wants to actually solve problems. So he knows he's got to work with some people he disagrees with. And a lot of people on the internet don't do that. They're like, you just scream.
All right, we got to disagree over here. AOC did not pave the way.
No, I mean, I think, hi everyone, be nice to me. I don't think she paved the way. I think she's still dealing with it on a daily basis. So I think the energy, the naysayers or whatever, the critiquers, focus more on the women elected officials than they do the men. I also think that Florida right now is not a place that a lot of the media or a lot of folks are looking at. I think Florida and Ohio have been both discounted as potential flippable states, so the attention goes elsewhere. So I just don't think he's just in the middle of it all. I mean, I know he's a historic leader, and I know that his election is historic and what he represents. Like the attention and the negativity that AOC receives, I still think it's ongoing. And same as Congressman Omar. They receive a lot of hate mail, they receive a lot of anger, a lot of frustration when things go wrong or things go, it's always directed at them. And it's just the thing that,
I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I feel like the reason, though, I feel like a big part of the reason why is because I feel like when the Justice Dems came in, keep in mind this org was originally pushed by it was Cenk and Kalinske, right? I feel like people legitimately thought, millennials legitimately thought that these 4 lawmakers were about to change all of Congress.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that those people fed into it. AOC, Rashid Tlaib, the other two, Ilhan Omar, and
Ayanna Presley.
Nice.
The squad.
I always forget the fourth one. Yeah, the fourth one. The squad, yeah. I feel like in a way, they kind of fed into that because they were very activist on Twitter, very much calling out other politicians, very much willing to fight with Pelosi and everybody else. And then as time has gone on and they've kind of realized like, okay, we need to do some effective lawmaking, I think that's where a lot of the hate comes in because it was the difference between the expectation and what actually happened at the end of the day where they were like, okay, well, we actually can't change the world with just the 4 of us. That's my feeling, I guess.
I believe that they still think that they can change the world, and I still think that they receive a lot of the vitriol, and they still take on a lot of the vitriol. I think, just like anything in politics, I think we've grown accustomed to it, so we've moved on to the next thing. I think people don't eyeball what they receive on the day in and day out the same way they did when they first came in or when they first showed up. When AOC defeated a lazy ass congressman who took his district for granted, and she emerged as this national leader. There, you have to understand, there's like, folks get jealous. They look at that and it's like, why not me? When we saw Presley do that too, they're like, why not me? And so many people run for office and lose. And then these two come out sort of out of the woodwork, and they do what they do. And so I think there's a lot more than the simplistic like, oh, well, they got into Congress and they were just throwing a lot of attention on Twitter and they were saying big things. That's why they were getting critiqued. I think there's more nuance to that they were women of color who emerged to power, and folks all across the board were uncomfortable with that. And I think that's always ongoing in this space, regardless of how much more diversity you see in Congress. And the changes that we've seen, and I think there's been great strides. I think when jealousy, maybe undertones of subtext of sexism and racism and all those things that play a role, they did give people permission to be assholes online and to be able to talk to folks and troll and be behind the scenes and be able to talk and communicate to folks where you can say the worst of the worst. And, you can say these to human beings who, even if you disagree with them or agree with them, you would hope that they're objective. They're trying to create change, that they're coming into this space, into civil society to civically engage with the idea of changing something for the better. And people, I think, just have a hard time with that sometimes.
Well, I think they're missing the hard work that they're doing behind the scenes.
Right.
You're a member of a legislative body, so you have to work with your colleagues. You have to compromise, and that's.
I also hard disagree. I disagree
That's
with
fine.
Yeah, I feel like I understand that there are always going to be people that are sexist and racist, but I feel like when you look at the blowback they were getting from progressives, because I think that's where a lot of the surprising blowback was coming from. I don't think it was because progressives were.
Okay, but can you be clear on progressives? Because I think there's always an oversimplification of like progressives. We put them in this sort of monolith. Are you talking about like progressives, online progressives? Or are you talking about
when I think of online progressives, it feels like AOC especially had like a mandate to rule on behalf of like progressive America. But it feels like as soon as she moderated a bit, stopped attacking other Dems as much, started openly working with Pelosi more, it felt like the tides turned and there were a couple of statements made where people were like, oh my God,
Accepting
she sold
endorsements.
out. Yeah, unbelievable. We thought she was going to be different, and now she's a sellout like every other person in Congress. I thought a lot of that progressive blowback came from the lack of the difference between the expectation and the reality of being a lawmaker. And I don't think a lot of that was driven by sexism or racism on the progressive side.
Pelosi still gets, as one of the badass women in charge, still gets a lot of heat and a lot of stuff thrown at her that are sexist. Obviously we could talk about the break-in that happened and the things that have happened in her life, or all that stuff. Like, I think that, again, I'm going to go back to my original argument that I think we've just grown accustomed to it. And when you grow accustomed to things happening to other people, and if it's not happening yourself, you just go, oh yeah, that's happening. It's been happening. We can't really, and you move on to the next thing. And I think that's a big challenge in our politics and our civil societies. We move on to these hot button issues, but there are still things that are happening that we've moved on from. And I think if Pelosi was here with us today, she'd be like, I receive sexist shit all the time. Things are thrown at me all the time. For me, being a woman in power, probably be considered to be the most powerful woman in politics. And so I think they're all still taking that kind of heat. I just don't think it's front and center.